Okay, hello Harold. I downloaded your scene file and I loaded it up, and this is what we've got so far. It's looking pretty good, honestly. Um, but let's see if we can take care of your rotation issues. So I'm going to go in here and select the red control, and you do have rotation on the X, which looks lovely. I'm going to go ahead and select the curve and change it to linear, but then I'm going to select this key down here at frame 35, and I'm going to hit D to make it easing into it. However, I think it should keep rolling. Okay, no, it's come to a stop here at frame 35. All right, so I think that this action is a little bit too fast in general. Um, but I can see that it is rotating. Like if we track the ball, the control is moving and there are values on it. You're correct. There's absolutely values on this control. So I think we're not seeing it because we haven't we need to slow the action down in general, and also we need to adjust the squash and stretch just a little bit. So I'm going to do that as a demonstration for you really quick, and then you can redo it in your scene file and make adjustments further according to your own tastes. So let me do that right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save the file as a different name so that I'm not overwriting your animation. I'm going to call this Harold version 2. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to frame 1. I'm going to frame our controls. I'm just going to go ahead and select all these controls that we have here, and I see that you've got all these beautiful keys. This is great. I'm going to make sure there's a key at frame 1, and I'm going to make sure there's a key on everything at frame 35 so that we're not changing any of your animation when I adjust the timing of it. So I think this whole thing right here, right, let's go through 5. Let's make it last until frame 53. So I'm going to select all of these curves down here in the timeline. One thing I've noticed, guys, when I'm doing the demonstrations, that the red the red key ticks are not showing up in my screen recorder for some reason. Just know that they are down here in the timeline as well as being here inside the graph editor. So why don't I just demonstrate adjusting the time in the graph editor since you guys can't actually see these key ticks down here. So I'm going to just marquee select all the keys that Harold has here. I'm going to go up to the region editor, which is located here in the graph editor. And then I'm just going to pull it out to frame 35 like that. And you'll notice that they all snapped to whole frame integers, which we want to have. The reason that it did that, if I click off this, is because inside our preferences, under time slider, I have not only sync to timeline display checked on and sync to sync selection and graph editor, but I also have snap to whole frames. Um, and then I have auto snap keys in here. So they'll kind of try to snap to a whole frame. If you don't have that checked on in your preferences, if you don't have this snap to whole frames checked on, when you stretch your stuff out in time on the timeline or in the graph editor, you can end up with frames on subframes. Like this could be on 22.5 or 22.7, and it gets to be a little bit messy. So I do recommend having this snap to whole frames checked on in your preferences. Okay, so now that we've made this whole thing just to last a little bit longer, let's go ahead and play blast it so we can see it in real time. And I'll play it back here. I'm going to loop it. So now we can start to see that rotation is happening in there. So let's make it a little bit more visible by adjusting the squash and stretch. So now I'm going to select your green squash and stretch controls. And your curves are absolutely lovely. So I'm going to select all three of these. And I see, actually, do you have any on this bottom one? No, you don't have any on the bottom. So you're doing all your squash and stretch here with the top one, which is fine. This is a nice curve. So let's select this. So here at the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select our translation and I'm going to use visualize, create editable motion trail. And in order to see it, you need to make sure you have motion trails checked on in your viewport. This one does have motion trails. Whoa, is it? Wrong one. Motion trails. Okay, so now we can see the path that is happening and adjust it with our translation. So, X. It's moving in X. Our X is flat, which is nice. This is our Y, and this is our Z. So for our Z translation, let's just make an adjustment to that in general and make it constant. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these frames in the middle, and then I'm going to make this linear. See how that adjusted our spacing a little bit? It's okay if it eases in the last one, but I think it should be a fast out since it's coming from off screen. And then let's adjust our Y translation. So I'm going to select the Y translation over here in the graph editor. And I'm going to just go ahead and select everything and hit D. I think you were right to have this fast out. So I'm going to hit linear right here. I'm going to select all these bottom ones. I'm going to break the tangents. I'm going to just like that. Okay, so let's see how that's modified our motion trail. And so it looks a little bit more like a bouncing ball. The other thing I want to do is I want to take this top one, and actually I'm going to hit D to make it flat out. Let's make this, bring this out just a little bit more. So I select the handle, and then if I hold shift, it'll pull it out on both sides. Select the handle, shift, pull it out on both sides. Okay. See how that's changed the shape of our motion trail here? So let's see what that does. I'm going to play blast it. And then I'm going to loop it. So now we can definitely see the rotation happening in here. So let's adjust the squash and stretch a little bit. And then we'll adjust the rotation for you. So let's go back to your squash and stretch control. I'll go here to frame one. This is the one that you've animated so beautifully. So here at the top of our arc, we want there to be no squash and stretch. We want the ball to be round. So I'm going to make this 0. So the ball's round. Here, I'm going to make this 0 too. When it hits the ground, beautiful squash. Right before it hits the ground, I'm going to hit S to create a key mark on our curve. And then I'm going to bring this up. Oh, sorry. Oopsie doodles. Then just stretch it way out. Um, so super stretched right before it hits, squashed right as it hits the bottom, and then we want it to be super stretched again. So now I'm going to take this and put it over here. And then about frame 10, let's make it back to 0. So I'm going to move this key here. So now it's completely round. It's completely round at the top of our thing. And then this is a beautiful squash. That's perfect. But here at frame 21, that's where we want it to be stretched out again. So I'm going to move this key here. And let's actually keep it round until about frame 18. Keep it perfectly round till here. It's perfectly round. It starts to stretch right before it hits the bottom. It hits the bottom, and then it's going to stretch back on the way out. So let's move this one over here. And then when we get about 2 or 3 frames into the future, we want it to be completely round again. So I'll move this key to frame 26 where it's completely round. Completely round. All right, this is where it squashes. So right before it squashes, we want it to be stretched out. And then a couple frames into the future, we'll do 3. I want it to be completely round. So stretch, boing, stretch again, right 1 frame afterwards. And then a couple frames in the future, we'll make it completely round. So I'll move this key here. So it's actually works in your benefit to only have the squash and stretch on the top controller here. Harold, I think that was a really good decision on your part. So now right before it squashes, stretch it out, but let's not stretch it quite so much, right? I think that the stretch should be a little bit less each time than the first one. And then the squash can be just a little bit less each time than the first one. So this next frame, is he on the ground there? Oh. He hits the ground here, so right here is where let's just move these 2 keys. Let's make this a lot less because he's about to come to a rest. So now we can really see that rotation happening a lot more by just tightening up the keys that we had on the squash and stretch. So let me click in here. We'll do a play blast just to see it in real time. And now that we have that, I'm going to loop it. So this is looking really good. I really like it at the beginning. I think it's rotating a little bit too much at the end. So if I'm just scrubbing through here, I think that probably from frame 38 on, we need to drastically reduce the rotation of the ball. So let's just adjust that quickly. We'll go to frame 1. I will select a control, hit F to frame it. I will hit our rotation. Come on, rotation channel. So we wanted like around 38. We wanted to really kind of reduce the amount of rotation that's doing. And whoa, this is a lot. If I look at this value, let's make this half as much. So again, I'm going to use the region tool. I'm just going to change how much it rotates to something a little bit less. And now this value is at 19,000. Wow, it's still a lot. But here at frame 38, we want it to be mostly done rotating. So I am going to hit S, frame this, and I'm just going to bring it all down, down. It's almost completely being done rotating. So let's see what that does. It's all an experiment. So let's loop it. And there we go, Harold. I think this is looking great. So you had the bones of great animation in there. We just needed to make a little bit of adjustment. So I'm gonna stop this play blast. I'm going to select our motion trail over here in the outliner, and then I'm just gonna delete it. I don't need it anymore. And there you go. I will save this to you now. I will send it back to you um, in an email, and I will also give you this recording so that you can recreate the same type of thing in your shot and adjust the timing how you like.